What's going on, everybody? Almost Counts Collectibles here, and in today's video we're going to be taking a look at one of the latest additions to my collection, and that is the Auto Morphin Zeo Rangers. Now, these Rangers debuted back in 1996. There have been 3 total packaging options that they have been released in. There were the individual figure releases in their individual packaging. There was a 6 Ranger pack that had all of the Rangers in a boxed packaging. And then we got the Heroes Edition re-release of the Auto Morphin Rangers. Now, the Zeo Ranger figures saw 2 basic releases, and those were the Auto Morphin Rangers, and then there were the Combat Action Rangers, that I like to call them. I have one right here. This is the Red Ranger. We'll talk more about that in just a second for comparison reasons. But the Auto Morphin line has always been one of my favorite, and that was pretty much up until Zeo. I did not care that much for the Auto Morphin Zeo Rangers, or the Turbo Rangers for that matter. The reason for that is the overall look of the Rangers saw a dramatic change. They got a lot bigger, bulkier, a lot muscular, a lot more muscular looking, and they just don't look like the Power Rangers. They are way too big, bulky, and muscular, and that really takes away from the figure. Once again, just for comparison, for what we're talking about here, this is the Battle Action Red Ranger. Now, these particular Rangers aren't as posable, but they do look a lot better. They're a lot more slender. They look a lot more like the actual Power Rangers. They're not these huge, big, bulky, muscular figures. So I think the overall look looks great. I think they display well. These particular figures came with all of their accessories to include their main weapons. So, for example, the Red Ranger got his actual Red Zeo sword. The Auto Morphin Rangers only debuted with 2 accessories. They had their blaster, and they had their little sword right here that would go in one of the corresponding holsters. So you got the all of the accessories. They looked better. Their only limitation was obviously no morphing action, and they're not as posable. But I think they display better and they look better. But here's what I like about the Auto Morphin Zeo Rangers that is a much better improvement upon the original Auto Morphin Rangers. So let's talk about that real quick. So I don't like the looks of these Zeo Rangers. As I've already clearly stated, they're way too big, way too bulky. Now, here is an original Auto Morphin Mighty Morphin Power Ranger. This is Red Ranger Jason. As you can see with these 2 figures, the original Auto Morphin Rangers were much more slender. They weren't these big, bulky figures. They look a lot better overall. They're very proportionate. I think they just looked a lot better. They display a lot better. And the overall toy was just better than the Zeo Rangers. But the thing I like better about the Zeo Rangers that a lot of you might not realize is with the original Auto Morphin Rangers, you get 1 basic automorph function before you have to manually reset it. So when you're in out of action form and you can see the head sculpt, you simply press down on the belt buckle. It releases the chest clamp and the back clamp that is currently holding the head in place, allowing the spring to kick in and do its job to throw the head forward. But after that first initial morph, you have to manually reset it. You open them back up, you flip the head back up to compress that spring back again, and you're ready for 1 more action before you have to manually reset it. So after a couple of times of doing that, the fun is kind of gone. Whereas with the Zeo Auto Morphin Rangers, that is not the case. You no longer use the morpher. There is now a manual lever on the back, and you don't have to manually reset the function. It will continually morph every time you press the lever. So if we're going to want to go to out of action form, we don't have to manually do it. We simply press down nice and firm, and it flops to the out of action form, which is Tommy. And there he is. And if we want to morph back into action, we simply press down again. And if we want to morph back out of action, you can see where I'm going with this. It is just 1 lever press, and you will get that automorphin function every time. So it's much more enjoyable and much more fun to play with and actually do the morphing sequence when you just press a lever and it continually does it. as opposed to manually resetting it every single time. If the original Rangers had this continuous morphing function, these would have been awesome figures. Now, they're still awesome in my book, but the playability of them would have been top notch. I mean, that automorphin action really would have been a lot more fun and longer lasting when you can continuously do it. Now, with this new function and the way it works, I haven't disassembled one of these to see the actual construction and the operating function inside to see what had to be made different and things like that. So I haven't dived that far into it yet, but I'm assuming that is why we got a larger body on these particular figures, was because of the new continual action. They probably had to change a little bit. I'm sure they probably could have found a way to still make the torso fairly small and keep that, considering we have an automorphing function on these original smaller bodies. But I'm guessing that had a lot to do with it. And since they had to make the body larger, they couldn't keep the old skinny arms. So to have it look somewhat proportionate, they had to make the arms bigger and the legs bigger. And that's why we ended up with this much larger, bulkier, more muscular looking Power Ranger figure. Now with the Gold Ranger, it looks a little bit better because of the shield. Kind of help blends in that bulkiness of the actual chest. So it doesn't stand out as bad on the Gold Ranger. It actually looks pretty good. But I will still take some of the other Gold Ranger figures over the Automorphin particular figure. With the head sculpts themselves, let's do a side-by-side comparison here of Jason and Jason. So to me, these look like the exact same sculpts. However, the material that was used looks to be clearly different. The plastic on the Zeo Rangers is a much lighter, different looking plastic material. The paint applications are also slightly different, especially around the eyes a little bit and with the eyebrows. But however, the actual mold, the facial structure of the actual mold itself looks almost identical. They just used, it looks like, different plastic material to actually make it. But the shapes of everything look almost identical, so I'm thinking these were the same molds, they just used a different plastic or different coloring or whatever the case may be. So overall, with the actual head sculpts, I mean, they still look great. They just used a different kind of plastic. So that's the main difference there. With the Gold Ranger, another thing to note is you will notice at the top of my Gold Ranger, to the lefts and the rights of the actual collar portion inside here on top of his shield, the left and the right far portion has been painted white, whereas the middle section is still black. Now, if this wanted to be completely show accurate, these white portions should be black and the only white part should be his neck guard. However, on my particular figure, they are white. I have noticed in pictures that other figures that I have seen images of, some of them look to have the full black inside on top. But then I see other pictures that look just like my particular figure right here, where the left and rights are white. So I'm assuming that there was a different release of this actual figure with the different paint applications. I'm not sure where the white collared Gold Ranger comes from. I don't know if it came from the 6-pack or if it was the individual release. It's kind of hard to tell from some photos, but most of the individual photos, pictures I've seen of him still in his packaging, looks like it is completely black up here. So I'm just assuming, that, I don't have proof of this, but I'm assuming this particular figure with the white collar on the left and the rights comes from the 6-pack. Now, if you guys know for sure, or you can clear that up for me, please do it down in the comments below. But that is just my opinion on the matter from some photos that I have seen. All right, let's talk real quick about the females. Now, the females are the exact same size as the males. They are very large, very bulky, very muscular. And once again, it looks even worse for the females because of how big and bulky they are. They just do not look good at all in their Ranger forms because of how big and bulky they appear. It really takes away from the figure. Even the original Automorphin female Rangers, we'll do some yellow side-by-side comparisons here. Once again, a much more slender look, not real big, beefy, and muscular. And I mean, she's almost my yellow Tanya Zeo Ranger right here is almost twice the size as the original one, and it just doesn't look good. It's way too big and bulky. We'll go ahead and check out the head sculpts here. So here's Tanya. Once again, I've always defended these older flip head Rangers with the head sculpts because I feel like, you know, for as old as these figures are and as cheap as they were, I feel like the head sculpts were pretty good. I mean, are they perfect? No, they're not perfect, but they all have a very good likeness to their actual actor. Here's Tanya. Once again, I don't think this is a bad Tanya head sculpt. I mean, it's not perfect, but when I look at this as a Power Ranger fan, I say, oh yeah, that looks like Tanya. That's Tanya. So there's Tanya. We'll go ahead and set her aside. We'll go ahead and check out Rocky here. So here's Rocky. Once again, his head sculpt looks similar to his Series 2 release. Just once again, the color of the plastic and stuff is a little bit different. Now we are going to talk about Kat here for just an extra second. Now this is Kat. Does she look bad? No. She's probably one of the worst looking head sculpts, but I still don't think it's terrible. However, Kat is one of the more sought after and usually more expensive Auto Morphin Zeo Rangers. Now, the reason for that is a lot of people like to take the Kat head sculpt from the Zeo Ranger and they like to swap it out with an old Kimberly action figure so that they can have a custom Kat Mighty Morphin Pink Ranger. So this is very common. I am not going to do that with this particular figure because the collection of Auto Morphin Zeo Rangers I got are actually in very good shape. Now there's a few scuff marks here and there, some tiny little nicks of paint missing. I'm going to clean them up and go back and touch up some paint. But for the most part, they are in very, very good shape. So I'm not going to mess with this Kat. Eventually, I'll probably will put together a custom Mighty Morphin Catherine Pink Ranger. But that is why usually people are selling Kat for a little bit more money and why people are looking for her a little bit more often because they're trying to use her head sculpt to make a custom figure that we never received. So we'll set that to the side. We'll go ahead and check out Adam real quick. And once again, I just love this Auto Morphin function. So here's Adam. Once again, the head sculpts, I mean, pretty clear right away who they are. They do look slightly different from the originals on just about all of them. And it's because of the either different plastic entirely or because the coloring that was used was different. But there are the Auto Morphin Zeo Rangers. And my final thoughts are, once again, I do not like the look of the figures. They are way too big, way too bulky, but they are a lot more fun to play with because of that continual morphing action. I did receive some of the accessories. I didn't receive all of them. They're missing their blasters, of course, but 3 of them did come with their swords, and Gold did come with his staff. I'll try to pick up the accessories along the way. But that is the Auto Morphin Zeo Rangers. Let me know what you guys thought about them. The Turbo Rangers are very similar. They kind of have the same problem, even with their regular like little combat action Rangers with the little key action. We'll talk about those in a separate video. I've got a lot more stuff that I've received that we're going to be taking a look at, but I just wanted to show you guys real quick, do a quick preview and review of the Auto Morphin Zeos. So let me know what you guys thought about them. And until next time, everybody, I will see you next video.